myself. Welcome to Resolve's Kitchen Table Conversation series. Resolve's Kitchen Table Conversation is a new digital series hosted by Resolve, the National Infertility Association, which brings back the nostalgia of our founding around Barbara Eck's kitchen table. Ms. Eck founded the first Resolve support group in 1974, where she brought women together to discuss issues that matter to them. We are so very proud to carry on this tradition around our nationwide network of support groups and through this new web series where we tackle topics important to anyone who is challenged in building a family. Today's table conversation, that is sharing our story, a conversation about infertility in the Black community. And this is sponsored by our friends at Granada Bio. And I'd like to welcome each and every one of you, Dr. Camille Hammond of Cade, of the Cade Foundation. We also have Brandon Johnson, who will talk to us a little bit about what males are going through, Black men in particular, when it comes to infertility, and Dejha Deaver, who is one of our own. She's a part of Resolve's Diversity and Inclusion Council. So thank you all for joining us. Even though this is a kitchen table conversation, and it looks like Dr. Hammond is in the kitchen, I'm at a table for sure, but we are going to have sort of like a round table conversation. But let's start off by just saying a little bit about ourselves. And I want to start with Dr. Hammond.
So welcome. Thank you for welcoming me and including me. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Tinina Cade Foundation, also known as Cade Foundation. And Cade is a nonprofit that supports families with infertility with both grants for fertility treatment and adoption, as well as information, letting them know about the pathways to parenthood, as well as the resources or local resources to help families along their pathway.
And Brandon, what would you like to say about yourself?
Well, again, thank you for having me. I'm very humbled to be here. I'm Brandon Johnson, the owner of Infertility Isn't Inferior. And what I do is I help men, women, and couples overcome the emotional aspect of infertility and give them the coping skills to move forward into family planning and whatever that looks like for them.
Dejha.
Thank you for having me. My name is Dejha Beaver. I'm a Resolve advocate. I've helped Resolve in many ways. I'm a support group leader for our local minority group and also a new national BIPOC group. I'm also part of our Raleigh NCBI Walk of Hope chair, and also, as you stated, Nichelle, our Diversity and Inclusion Council.
Yes. So let's talk about the emotional part of infertility in the Black community. So often we can start from not seeking therapeutic help, right, Brandon? But let's start there, the emotional part of infertility that is just so real.
It starts because people are ashamed. We're known for being a very fertile people, and everybody have babies. From teenage pregnancies, we're always ranked amongst the highest. So when you can't have a child, you stand out. And I think it's always been more common than we've actually portrayed. And people have gotten away with it and not saying anything because of the shame. In one instance, I'm thinking of a close relative of mine who always wanted children, but never had children and dated women with children to help fill that void, but would never say anything about it. So there's the shame that comes with infertility and having to overcome that part alone and rebuild yourself as a person.
Now, we all have our personal stories. Dr. Hammond, one thing I love that you mentioned about the Cade Foundation is you guys provide support in addition to, and I'm sure it's not all financial, it's, resources for couples. Tell us a little bit about that and some of the folks that you come in contact with.
Well, so the money is an important factor, as you mentioned, but we can't give everybody money. But what we can give 100% of the people that we come in contact with is hope and encouragement, and also information. So many communities, particularly communities that are disadvantaged for any number of reasons, including race and geography and income and many other reasons, there may not be a knowledge, kind of a foundation of knowledge about what infertility is versus what it isn't. What it is medical. What is not is punishment, right? But if you don't have anyone who's a part of your friend, family circle, faith circle, to help you understand, well, you need to see the doctor. Yes, pray, but also go talk to your physician, because this may be a hormonal, or, there may be some anatomical issue that can be easily addressed. So part of the mission of Cade is really to equip all families with good information about what infertility is, what the different pathways to parenthood include, and then also where they can access the resources, so that whatever pathway that they decide they want to pursue, they can access that support, whether it be fertility treatment, whether it be adoption, whether it be donor gametes, donor egg, gestational carrier, donor sperm, whatever it is you decide to do, even for those who decide, frankly, that they want to be child-free by choice, what are the support resources for them?
I'm glad you offer that information. Dejha and I had a conversation over the weekend. Information was hard for you to get, right, Dejha?
Yes, and I remember first being diagnosed with infertility. It was kind of like, oh, you have infertility. I'm like, okay, so what's next, right? Where do I go next? Do I go to a clinic? Do I see a different type of doctor? Are there support groups? And it was nothing. I found myself pretty much alone and having to kind of research myself on trusting Google, right? And
Dr. Google.
Yeah, Dr. Google. And so that's how I found about Resolve. And that was my starting point of getting information. But when I was diagnosed, it wasn't like, this is a pamphlet of what infertility is, what you should and should not do, all that jazz. So yeah, access to information, equitable information was not there. So you're pretty much left alone. And if you don't have your family support or maybe someone who understand, it's hard to kind of navigate through that.
Absolutely.
So what can we do? What are some of the things that we can do to get the folks in our community talking about it instead of gossiping about it, supporting those who are struggling to build their families?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that gossiping is only a problem when it's not based on any kind of real information, when people are just making stuff up. So programs like this one that Resolve is hosting are doing a great job at starting to dispel the myths and starting to share good, reliable information. So if you want to gossip and tell me about the 10 clinics in the community, well, go ahead and gossip. If you want to gossip and say, well, God is punishing her, well, you can keep that to yourself. But if you want to share good information that can help me along my pathway, even things like, well, I think Sally had infertility and she went to this clinic. Well, great. Then I can go ask Sally about her experience. So, dismantling or demystifying infertility, and also sharing good facts so that people can make informed decisions about their family building.
And also standing in your truth. I'm going to ask this question to all of you. What encouraged you to stand in your truth and stand firm in the situation, your fertility challenge?
The biggest reason is the fact that there's no one talking there was very few men talking about it. And many men are struggling with it. And as you scour social media or the internet, you get these stories of women telling their husband's story, or men who are too embarrassed to show their face and talk about male infertility and how they are depressed and angry and upset, and they had another failed IVF or IUI, or they find out they have to use donor sperm and they don't know how to deal with the emotions of it. So it's really standing out there and courage and trying to help others and serve others to be a better version of themselves and to help them grow and mature and be more.
Dr. Hammond.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What encouraged you or what helped you to stand in your truth, to embrace your fertility journey?
So I was going through my fertility journey like 20 years ago. All right. So I'll put that out there. This was before we had, the Kim Kardashians who, like her or dislike her. She has really made infertility something that regular people talked about. So I didn't know anybody personally, and certainly didn't see anybody who I connected with kind of on TV that admitted that they had infertility. And when my husband and I finally overcame infertility and had these beautiful, perfect triplets, and I didn't tell my whole story, but my mother was my gestational carrier. We felt such a sense of gratitude and debt to the community because there's no way we would have been parents had it not been for the doctors, the nurses, just all of these people that played a part in our journey. So we thought the way to pay down our debt was to fund another family. And so we formed a nonprofit because frankly, we couldn't get anybody to give us any money without having the tax exempt status. And our goal was to fundraise $10,000, give that money to one family, and then, continue about our regular lives. But that goal of funding one family, even the first year, we raised enough to fund 3 families. Sorry, that's one of those 3.
It's fine. It's natural. How old is that one of the 3?
16. So
Oh,
my
wow.
kids are 16 right now. So, we did it really out of a sense of gratitude and wanting to pay the blessing forward. And that just evolved to the point where I was in a position where I could stop doing my work in clinical medicine. My husband still practices. He's an orthopedic surgeon. And I run Cade full time and have been able to do work that I love. And so I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
What about you, Dejha? I know sometimes we tend to take a while before we step out and just share our stories, but what about you?
So you bring a good point. When I first got diagnosed in like 2014, it took me about 5 years before I really felt comfortable sharing my story. I think what really made me want to stand in my truth was when I first told my family and friends, like, we're trying, but something's not right. And then we got diagnosed with infertility. It was more so, girl, ain't nothing wrong with you. You'll be fine. Just lose weight or, try this and pray about it and it'll go away, right? And I'm like, you guys know something's not right, right? And that just kind of put fire within me to not only take charge of what was going on, but to learn more about it. And of course, the alarming stats when it comes to fertility in the Black community. But another thing that really was a turning point for me was when I first did a walk of hope here in Raleigh. I was the only Black female. I saw one other Black person, and I was like, hey, do you have infertility? And she was like, no, I'm a doctor. And I was like, oh, I mean, it's like you're here, but it was like, oh crap, I'm really by myself. And so that just made me want to use my voice even more and really get into advocacy work to have people, average women just navigating through this to feel like they can help their family understand and help themselves by getting resources, and the support group will be the, first stepping stone to kind of embracing your journey and using your voice to empower yourself and to help your family as well.
Yeah. I think, and I failed to mention a little bit about my story, my fertility story. My husband and I but we started actively trying for a child in about 2014, and we did not get pregnant. And so we went to a doctor and we were diagnosed with unexplained. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. It's almost as if you want to hear something is wrong, but unexplained infertility. And it was rough to not know what could be the problem. I thought it was stress. My husband thought it was stress. As we understand that when it comes to infertility, that is not always the women, as Brandon shared. About 30% of infertility cases are attributed to women, another 30% attributed to men, and then there's 30% attributed to problems, a combination of problems in both men and women, and then there's that small percentage of just really not knowing. And so we were a part of that 30%, whereas a combination. And I can tell you, it's not talked about, or at least it wasn't talked about in my household, my family. And I remember this day going to a clinic and running right into a very dear friend of mine. And we both looked at each other and we said, "What are you doing here?" "No, what are you doing here?" It was just, we wanted to, who knew that we both were going through the same thing, but we didn't feel comfortable. And I think that's why these conversations are courageous conversations, and why they are so important to just talk about, what many of us have been going through and have experienced. Because it's so funny. I don't know about you guys. I often get, "Oh yeah, I went through I had infertility. I went through IVF." And all of a sudden, as soon as you share your story, everyone has a story.
Absolutely. Floodgates open.
Just think about our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, when she said she didn't bring it up for a very long time.
That's right. Yeah, so we gotta have these courageous conversations. You guys have said a couple things that I just have been inspired by, and I've written down: courageous conversations, speaking your truth, and then also empowering yourself. Not waiting for somebody to come along and tell you you're okay, you're valid, you're important, but what you're experiencing doesn't make you a purple unicorn. There's nothing new under the sun. Sometimes if you don't have someone that you can look at who can affirm you, you need to look in the mirror and affirm yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Brandon, what conversations do you, I guess, implement these conversations with young men or young people, or how do you get others engaged?
Especially this month, I'm gonna focus on courageous conversations because they don't happen enough. And even in infertility, sometimes we ourselves can soften it up, but we have to explore some of those conversations, like parenthood, and what happens when one person doesn't want to be a parent but the other one does. And then you find out you have this infertility issue, and now you really have to juggle that ball in the air. Or you have you marry someone, they have children, and all of a sudden you have trouble having children. And so those conversations, and being courageous and honest about your feelings, and challenging each other on your thought process, because you're both struggling as a couple.
That's right.
And you have to look out for each other and challenge each other's thoughts, and even when it's too much. But those courageous conversations are highly important.
I'm happy that you're doing your part. And I'm also happy, Dr. Hammond, you mentioned pathways to motherhood, pathways to parenthood, right?
Yes.
I'm scheduled to get a myomectomy in a few days. And so I said to myself, I never thought this would be the pathway to parenthood to get a myomectomy, but getting that information out there that there's no one size fit all, there's no one pathway, no one road to parenthood, to motherhood, to fatherhood. Getting that information out there. I never thought in a million years this would be my journey. And so what are some of I know you mentioned early on, but there's adoption, right, Dr. Hammond? And gestational carrier, explain that, because it's different from surrogacy, correct?
Well, so, okay, let's go back to adoption. So adoption, there's different kinds of adoption. There's public adoption, usually called foster care to adopt. And then there's private adoption, where you work with an agency who can help place newborn. Usually the private is for newborns and the public is for if you are open to taking an older child or to adopting an older child. When you are not able to carry a baby in your womb, you would work with a gestational carrier. The common vernacular is surrogate, but that's actually not correct, because a surrogate is a woman that uses her own eggs and carries that baby for another couple in her womb. That's not legal in many states, because there have been a lot of bad outcomes when the gestational carrier is also related to that child. So that's not something you want to do. You want to have, if you need a gestational carrier, that egg needs to come from someplace else. And then even other fertility treatments can include donor sperm, okay? Because as you mentioned, you got about a third of cases that are sperm related, and then donor egg, and working with donors. You can work with known donors, so people who maybe a sibling, a cousin, or a best friend, or you can work with someone who is not known. Either way, there needs to be a lawyer involved, and not just kind of a general lawyer that also handles divorces and small claims. Like, you want somebody who does this work 24/7, because they're going to be much better at helping you and counseling you and advocating for you than if you get someone that kind of does this part-time. So there are many different pathways to parenthood, and I think all of them are legitimate. So we need to stop politicizing family. The way you build your family is your business, but it's really not my right to judge and denigrate that decision.
And I think Dr. Hammond, you bring a good point about different pathways to parenthood, because a lot of times in the Black community, if you tell someone, hey, we're struggling with infertility, they'll say, just adopt. Typically, because the only thing they know, they'll say, well, just adopt. And I think it comes to education piece to our family, ourselves, in the community, to talk about these other pathways to motherhood, fatherhood, and parenthood, because there's different ways, and everybody wants to adopt. Like you said, wherever they choose is their business, and just educating families about the different options they can explore is very important, and to have those conversations and not just let it be, adoption is the only way, that this is the way the family thinks that, we can only adopt and you will be cured, because that doesn't cure your infertility. So,
That's right.
I think it's very important you bring that up, the different pathways to parenthood.
And I'll just say, I don't want to cut you off, but adoption should be a decision, not a default. No child wants to feel like they were brought in because plan A didn't work out. You don't want to do harm to a child because of your own issues. So please don't use adoption as kind of a plan B or a plan C. That needs to be a decision that you have made for your own reasons, because there's a lot to adoption. It's not just I'll just adopt. That's not a just.
Yeah,
it's a complicated process.
Absolutely.
I've heard that so many times. Oh, just adopt. But it's not that simple, and it's not what we want to do. So normalize these conversations about different pathways to parenthood.
And you're not guaranteed a child. I mean, there are people
Absolutely.
who've been waiting 7 years or more for a child. And the older you get, your chances are against you.
That's right.
Yeah, now, Brandon, are you talking about going through treatment? Or
No,
you
as far as adoption.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So have you resolved your infertility, Brandon?
It depends on how you look at that. Can I have a baby on my own? No. But we did adopt. And that's the route that we chose. We also have tried donor sperm. So resolved it. I've overcome the pain of it, and I rebuilt myself when I'm more confident in myself again.
Yeah, that's good to hear. No, I would confidently say resolved it. You know, I'll share this quick little story with you all. My friend, a really good friend of mine, helped me resolve, even though my husband and I are going through the process, the IVF process now, right? She said to me a few years ago, she called me on Mother's Day and said, Happy Mother's Day. And I looked at the phone. I'm like, why would you say that? I'm not a mother. And she says, you are a mother. God has blessed you to be nurturing. You are a mother to children who may not receive the love that they need to get at home. Once she changed my mindset or helped me just be that friend that would speak life into me, it just changed me so much that I was able to look at the situation differently. And then I had another friend who said, I was complaining, and she said, wait a minute, do you want to be a mother or do you want to be pregnant?
That's the question.
That's a loaded question.
That's the question.
Stop me in my tracks. And from that moment, so I confidently say, I don't look at myself as someone who is not a mother today. I get great joy when my niece mistakenly, you know, kids, sometimes they talk so fast, she'll call me mom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she called me mom. You know, it's just a wonderful feeling. And so, no, I was just curious and wanting to hear about where you are in your journey. And then Dejha, do you mind sharing where you?
Yeah, so currently where I am, currently my journey, we've done IVF, unfortunately we suffered from a loss. So is my journey resolved? No, we're still on the path to motherhood. But like you said, do you want to be pregnant or do you want to be a mother? So like you said, I have nieces and nephews. And so I think also in my journey, I had to have that hard self-reflection. And I've gotten that by embracing my journey of saying, are you okay with being pregnant or being a mother? And so that kind of, like you said, has just kind of changed my perspective on things. But currently we are going to try again, do another IVF cycle. So
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Sorry for your loss. I think that's another thing. My friend, she opened my eyes. She had a miscarriage and she said it hurts her that people don't call her on Mother's Day. She says, I am a mother, and you know, now I make it a conscious effort to even acknowledge that sometimes, you know, we fall not victim or prey, but we think of the societal norm that a mother is someone with physical evidence, right? But that's not necessarily the case. And so I'm just, you know, happy that you all are here and to share and just challenge people to think outside the box.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with you helping them along that pathway, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that means when somebody asks what feels like an inappropriate question, you letting them know that was hurtful and it was inappropriate. Now, the truth is, if you really want some information, I can guide you to resources, but don't ask me that again. That's okay, because then they've learned not to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brandon, you're nodding your head as if you want to say something.
No, I agree with Dr. Hammond, is that you have to protect yourself at all times. and my condolences on your loss. And you're still a mother, and that loss is devastating. So yeah.
Well, I think this was a wonderful kitchen conversation, although Dr. Hammond is the only one in the kitchen, but I will say I'm in the dining room, so we have Brandon obviously in the library somewhere, the den, the office. But
yes, kitchen's occupied.
Any last words before we just wrap this up and I say my goodbyes?
This is Dejha from just going through infertility at a very young age till now. I would tell young women, young men, Black women, couples, own your truth, embrace your journey as hard as it is. And like Dr. Hammond said, sometimes you have to have those crucial conversations with your family, like, stop, this hurts me. I don't love, here's some resources and educate. Don't just let the notions go by and let people talk to you any type of way. Really take charge of your infertility and your journey. Let you write your story. Don't let anyone else, no doctor, no family member, you own your journey.
Spot on.
Yes.
Yeah, anyone else?
I would say don't go through it alone.
Yes.
This road is tough, and it's already lonely in itself because you're because your own preconceptions. So find someone that you can go through it with, find someone you can talk to, find someone you can relate to, and lean on each other, but do not go through it alone because it's just way too difficult.
Dr. Hammond.
I would say you're going to have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And just like Dejha said, in her experience, when she didn't find what she was looking for, she helped create it. She pursued it until she got what she needed. Nobody's going to look out for you as hard and as strong and as long as you're going to look out for you. So if you don't get the information that you need, don't be afraid to continue to look. Dr. Google is not always right, but Dr. Google has a lot of information. And so that's something that I think we need to be mindful of, and that will help us as individuals and as a community.
Well, please ignore my alarm. But I want to just thank all of you for participating. I really enjoy each and every one of you. I also want to say thank you to our viewers. Thank you for making time and clicking on this video. If those of you who are watching and listening, if you're new to Resolve, please check us out online, resolve.org. If you're unfamiliar with the name Resolve, just understand and know that it is the National Infertility Association. You can follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Be sure to become familiar with us and also support it. Resolve is very passionate about advocacy work and educating those who are listening and watching and are new as well. Also, I want to say a big thank you to Granada Bio, our sponsor for this video. Thank